everyone. Welcome to the Sunday episode of Reality Check. My name is Nagma and I am your host for this evening. Thank you very much for joining this discussion because this is a topic that is extremely crucial to address during these very challenging and testing times. सबका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है एंड हमें बहुत खुशी है कि आप अपनी संडे शाम के 1.5 घंटे हमारे साथ बिताएंगे क्योंकि ये इश्यूज सुनने इन इश्यूज के बारे में सुनना बहुत ज़रूरी है, इनके बारे में सोचना बहुत ज़रूरी है. For the benefit of our audience who's joining us for the first time today, Reality Check is a series. It's an initiative that a group of social entrepreneurs across different parts of the countries have come together and put together. We feel very strongly that the voices of those who are working day in and out must be heard. इस पूरे दौरान इस पूरे कुछ पिछले हफ्तों और महीनों के दौरान हमने बहुत सारे किस्से सुने, lots of episodes of which made us extremely sad and concerned, and lots of stories of incredible bravery, incredible resilience, and incredible work. And a reality check gives us an insight into that kind of work. And we feel very strongly that we should be able to showcase it. So yes, series इन सोशल एंटरप्रेन्योर्स ने इकट्ठे मिलके पुट अप किया है. मई 21 से ये सब शुरू हुआ है. We've been showing different episodes. In fact, अगर किसी ने नहीं देखा, I would recommend to go through those episodes. They're extremely insightful. So I am delighted to be given an opportunity to host the last episode of this series. It brings forth some of the most beautiful, unheard, yet unfaded and strong voices from the ground. Today we have 4 panelists with us. It is my privilege to be able to bring their stories to you or to work as a conduit to bring out the best of their stories. They're working in very diverse geographies. Their challenges that are prevalent in those geographies are escape us because we are dealing with the immediate surroundings around us and also whatever comes to our attention given the media coverage. But the plight of these areas is equally and maybe even more important because it escapes us so much. So we thought, why can't we have this theme as the closing episode of Reality Check, which is lives and which brings highlight to the lives and the struggles of these geographies which escape us most of the time. But a quick check to the audience before we start. I want to inform you that in this course of discussion, in this course of the webinar, if you have any questions for panelists, please share them in the Q&A tab you see at the bottom of your screen. We are also streaming this webinar live on Facebook, and the link for this is in the chat tab at the bottom of your screen. So you can ask your network to access it. Please ensure as many people as you know view this webinar and post any questions there as well. All right, now down to the real business of the evening. Generally cut off from the developed urban localities, many remote geographies have faced unending challenges during this period of lockdown. These challenges were always there, but have kind of become more grievous during these times because of lack of access to resources, access to healthcare facilities, unemployment, education disruption, along with restricted mobility. They've just added tribulations to the communities in these parts of the country. And we've heard stories from these areas constantly in the news, but the gravity of the situation only gets amplified because of the lockdown. And we have to somehow, I think, hear them and realize what can we do to make this better? With these questions looming over us, I want to begin this evening's discussion on life in difficult geographies. Our first panelist, and it's my pleasure to introduce her, is Stanzin Saldon. She's the co-founder of Zamba, a trust registered in Kargil, Ladakh, working primarily to bridge gaps in school education, health, sanitation, and developing Zamba as a platform for social change. During this lockdown, she, along with this team, with her team and volunteers, are trying to support government schools and the students through teacher training sessions and workshops and administration through relief and sanitation drives in Kargil. She's been part of the State Education Transformation Initiative of Kevali Education Foundation in JNK, and she is an AIF Fellowship alumnus She also shares stories from rural Ladakh with PARI, People's Archive of Rural India. So with that, welcome Saldon. It's really, really good of you to join us, and heartiest welcome to this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that I'm here among all of you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Saldon, before I even invite the others, I actually want to pause with you, and it would be great for you to share something for us to get to know you better. Your background, maybe how did you really get involved in this work, and why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah, so I was born and brought up in Leh, and then I went to do my college in Government Medical College Jammu. I was doing medicine, but उस medicine करने के 2 ही साल में I realized that I wasn't made for it, and then I took that hard and very difficult decision to follow my heart and do something that my heart really wants to and feels connected to. So I started working and volunteering for various organizations while pursuing BSW from IGNOU. And then while doing that, I got the opportunity to work with American India Foundation Fellowship Cohort in Bangalore with one of the organizations working in government schools in Bangalore. And I was mostly working with girls students over there who were studying from classes 6th to 12th. So I was handling a project there called Girls Glory, which was mostly about adolescent girl child healthcare and menstrual management. So while I was building up that project there and was thinking about my own region back in Ladakh, I got an opportunity to funnel some funds from there to one of the schools here in Kargil, which is situated in Dras, Higher Secondary School Dras, which also needed an initiative something similar to that because we had been involving with the students when we were in college days back then. So I figured out to get some funds to come here and work with the students here. But while I was working, I realized जितने भी challenges हम सुनते थे कि यहाँ पे सब काम करना मुश्किल है, ये है, वो है. But that was the time that me and my friends, we really felt the pressure of it. Because उसी टाइम पे कश्मीर में बुरहान वानी इनका encounter हो गया था and everything was shut down, you know. And हमारे पास limited funds थे उसको utilize कर पाने का resources हमारे पास कम होने लगे. So somehow we figured it out. We built a toilet for the girls students over there. We did some awareness sessions with them. Yeah, and it went pretty well. It took a longer time, but it went pretty well. But we also realized during our course of work in that school कि सिर्फ health and sanitation ही नहीं, there were so many other issues as well in most of the government schools around here. So we thought of like why not to make our work a little broader, you know. And so we started thinking about what to do. So जैसे ये बात चल रही थी, so I got a great opportunity to work with Cavalier Education Foundation, and I'm very thankful that I worked with them, which kind of gave me an insight into the whole school transformation initiative. And then one day I thought that now I think I know a lot about it, and I should start working for it in my own region. So then we actively started engaging with one of the schools starting 2019. And yeah, so we were supporting and we were developing our program of whole school transformation initiative in that school and supporting the school head and trying to build a library space for English learning and socio-emotional learning space there. And also focusing on the health and sanitation initiative as a subheading in that broad heading in that school. So yeah,
but it is fascinating that being a medical student, ending up in the right place because you're following your heart, then being able to come back to your to a place that where your heart belongs and wanting to dedicate your years to it is an incredible. I think many of us struggle with what people like you and like the rest of the panelists also, what keeps you going, because it is not an easy journey for sure. And I'm going to come back to you more on this. And for now, I will place the spotlight with Tabish Habib, who is our second panelist. And welcome, Tabish. It is fantastic of you to join us. And she is also one of the few women entrepreneurs of Kashmir with over 6 years of experience in advertising and branding. She's established Prism Creations. She's established ThinkPod. She's an entrepreneur who has helped many businesses flourish from startup stage through consultancy, teaching them many, many aspects of businesses. And through her venture, which is Pictures Kashmir, she's providing a platform to enthusiasts and professionals of Kashmir in photography, art, and design. So Tabish, this is like a profile of complexities. I am in awe of every piece, everything from you being a Kashmir woman entrepreneur, the kind of business you are running, you're talking about arts integrated into business. It's just fascinating to read that profile. So over to you. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Nagma. I think it comes with the complexity comes from the place from which I basically belong. I basically started, I never actually imagined that I'll start with I'll collaborate such complexities in my day-to-day living. But I think it's more than a need rather than, rather a necessity to actually weave in everything or incorporate all sorts of things into your business when it comes to a place like Kashmir, where the opportunities are very limited. Saladin said, that we are in a place which is almost landlocked. We have restricted access to resources. We have a place which has been under a traumatic, cloud of uncertainties from past 20 years. I mean, from the day I've been born, I've not seen any day for that matter, which is normal. For the rest of the country right now, the lockdown is something pretty much which is very new and something, which everybody is amazed about. But I think in Kashmir, it has been a very normal situation from years together now. Talking about my work, when I started Prism Creations, it was more from the perspective I started working as a freelance graphic designer, and then it moved on to printing, and then I had to weave in, my passion was photography, so I tried to help as many as I can by setting up exhibitions and photo walks and all sorts of things. And then ultimately I realized that, the space for expression in Kashmir with regard to setting up your own business or having a startup is so restricted that there's nobody you can actually talk to. There's no space where you can actually sit and discuss these things. There's no community where actually, the ideas, the concepts can be actually taken to another level. So with that came the conception of ThinkPod, and ever since, like Saladin said, I've started it. The first year Burhan Wani was killed, and then the second year was something else. The third year is a pandemic. So it's a new. Every year there is something or the other that keeps on happening. And apart from that, there is something that I must chip in, is that Kashmir is a place which primarily functions for hardly 6 months in a year, because half the time the government and the other institutions or people for that matter move to Jammu and other parts of the plain in the country. And for the rest of the time, we have a very restricted time where we're allowed to function. And with this pandemic happening now, it's something which is a new challenge that we're all facing.
Yeah. No, that's incredible, given the context that you set up your entire network with. So fantastic. And we'll come back to that after we also speak to our third panelist, Emerine Karbi, Program Manager of Impulse NGO Network. Welcome, Emerine. Again, a body of work that I incredibly admire. You are working really to scale impulse models with our neighboring countries such as Nepal and Bangladesh and Myanmar. And you're trying to create partnerships with stakeholders like the government, CSOs, law enforcement agencies, legal and service providers to prevent and to rehabilitate those who suffer from cross-border human trafficking cases, instances. Which is difficult even in cities like Bombay, Delhi, but given the cross-border complexity, trafficking takes a different, nature of its own. But you're also sensitizing all stakeholders through training of media persons and law enforcement agencies. So that seems incredible without even the context of the geography. But would love to hear from you more about you as a person first, and then we'll definitely go to more of your work as well.
Thank you, Nagma, and thank you everyone for coming to this webinar. Well, I come from Meghalaya. I have a very, I come from a very mixed ethnicity, which is matrilineal and Muslim background. My grandfather is a Muslim and my grandma is a Khasi. So it's a very weird combination, and it's a very difficult thing to navigate when you live in a tribal community where sometimes you feel like you belong and you don't belong at the same time. Uh, and What inspired me to work in development and social impact space was listening to stories of my grandfather. He used to help the refugees during the post-liberation war of Bangladesh in 1971. He helped all the refugees who were crossing the borders coming to Meghalaya. He would give them shelter and food. And during my teenage years, I was like going through an existential crisis. I was studying something else. I was in commerce, and I was asking myself this question, like, what is the purpose of my living? How am I making my life meaningful? So it was a really crazy period being an adolescent. Then I realized that I wanted to join a social impact space, and I joined Impulse NGO Network. It is an organization that works, like you said, on anti-human trafficking in the Northeast, especially. And Northeast is an area where there's a lot of conflict politically. There are I mean, there's a lot of imbalance on the ground, and there's a lot of young people, women and children who would like to leave this region to find better opportunities outside, better employment opportunities outside. Hence, human trafficking is massive in this region. With open borders like Nepal, Bangladesh, and Myanmar, it makes it even more vulnerable for a lot of people in the communities to become victims of human trafficking. So yeah, that's what I do. Thank
No,
you.
thank you. Thank you very much. More to come from you. And I welcome Paul Chawang, who works, and he's a member of AMIA. What struck me, and also is the lone male member on this panel. So welcome, Paul. A little extra welcome. What struck me about Paul's work when he was describing it yesterday was the range of work that AMIA and Paul work on, which is including issues of with elderly, persons with disability, unemployment, rural women, farmers, based out of Arunachal Pradesh. And so the range is fantastic. He's been at it for at least 12 years now, Paul, I think. So actually quickly over to you to hear more from you as to how you are where you are and why you do what you do.
Okay, thank you, Nagma. So I'm basically from Nagaland, but I got settled in Arunachal Pradesh, and my better half is from Arunachal Pradesh. The reason why I got stuck in Arunachal Pradesh. Yeah, I'm basically from farmers' parents, and then yeah, I went to South for my master in social work in Loyola College, and working with the transgenders, working with female sex workers in and around Chennai under World Vision and Action Aid, and working with the street children, that opened my all perspectives towards humanity in needy. So that was the foundation when I started to think that there are a section of humanity in our society who needs always the attention of someone to care for them. So that's the reason how this built in me to serve the humanity. And after completing my master in social work and human rights, I came to Northeast, and I chose Arunachal Pradesh to be entry point to practice my profession in social work. So it's a very strange place for me. The traditional practices, customaries are completely different from Naga society. I am Naga, and then in this part of the society for whom I work is typically the Igu, we call it the traditional priest. Everything is intact. This Idu Mishmi community. So there were a lot of contrasts, even related to my intermarriage, and when I set to start my work here, there were a lot of superstitious beliefs and taboos which were contributing to what I what I intend to do. But having spent 10 to 12 years in this area, I began to learn the culture, and I began to, when I started adjusting to the situation. And till date, I've been serving in this area with no expectations from the people or the community for whom I work. I just consider everyone as, humanity who are in need, and, especially as you have mentioned, Nagma, the differently able, the aged, the adolescents, the minors, the women, and in this area, it is a beautiful area. The nature access is very beautiful, and the people are heartwarming. And the abundance of that, the abundance of work that I have to do is just because there are no other, organizations who are into the field. That's why I'm venturing into multi-sectors.
Yeah.
So it has been my journey for the past 10 to 12 years, and I am just, going ahead with that. Yeah. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And I want to really, dwell on this for 30 more seconds. That when Paul told me, when I read about Amya, and when I was speaking to Paul, and he said that we have to do all of this because there are very few who are even around to help. It is a very important thing to remember as we hear more from all the four of them, that there are fewer people who are risking being on operating out of these geographies, and maybe we who are not operating out of these geographies have a lot to think about as we listen to more coming from there. With that, Saldon, I'm going to come to you. You have been quiet for some time. मुझे आपसे ये पूछना था that you've been operating now out of Kargil. इस lockdown की situation में education or healthcare, especially, what can we understand from you from Kargil really that we should know? What would you like us to know from there, and what would an average day look like with these two contexts? You're mute, Saldon.
I'm sorry. So जैसे अभी ताबिश ने कहा कि Kashmir is locked down for like they are functional mostly for 6 months of the year, which is the most active part of the year for them. So similarly in Ladakh, because of our geography, because of our climatic conditions, हमारा वैसे भी 5 महीने we are cut off from the rest of the world, because the roads are blocked. There is only one airport, and the tickets are heavily, they're crazy, बहुत महंगा होता है. A normal person cannot afford it. So उस सब conditions को देख के वैसे भी हमारी स्कूल, यहाँ के schools मार्च से नवंबर तक function करते हैं.
अच्छा.
Yeah, so we have a very long winter vacation break, which sometimes extends to March end, depending on the amount of snowfall and the amount of cold out there. So we are locked down for 5 months from the rest of the country. On top of that, when we were J&K, now we are not. There were all these, issues related to the state, which would directly or indirectly affect us in the forms of curfews or roadblocks, or तो वहाँ उसकी वजह से टाइम पीरियड काम करने का और भी कम हो जाता था. तो जैसे ही लास्ट ईयर आर्टिकल 370 का एब्रोगेशन जो हुआ, तो लद्दाख हैज 2 points of view. Leh was in for it mostly, and Kargil was not in support of it mostly. So that hit the people of Kargil badly, because फिर just like Kashmir, यहाँ पे भी internet बंद कर दिया गया, and there were curfew imposed by the local autonomous bodies, saying that we don't want this to happen, so we will shut off every offices, we'll shut off schools. So I practically started working starting June last year, 2019. और जैसे मैंने काम करना शुरू किया, थोड़ा सा काम किया था, फिर लॉकडाउन हो गया, और जो बच्चे थे उनका सिलेबस कंप्लीट नहीं था, टीचर्स ठीक से नहीं पढ़ा पाए. फिर जब वो लॉकडाउन खुला तो अचानक से एग्जाम्स आ गए, and the exams weren't postponed, the students weren't taken care of, nobody thought of it, and then but फिर भी सब कुछ चलता रहा. And then इस साल लॉकडाउन हो गया. Our roads were supposed to open earlier, a little earlier this year, keeping in mind that now we are a UT and the central government should be more active in opening the roads. then ये lockdown हो गया and everything just stopped. So and the schools aren't open since ending November last year. So it's a long time, you know. So particularly working in the field of education, I would say that, and I really feel that this sector has बहुत ज़्यादा बुरी तरह से इफेक्ट हुआ है, स्पेशली यहाँ पे करगिल में, जहाँ पे कि ज़्यादातर बच्चे गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स में पढ़ते हैं, बिकॉज यहाँ पे इंटरनेट फैसिलिटी बहुत ही कम जगहों पर है, और जहाँ पर है वहाँ पे भी स्पीड बिल्कुल अच्छी नहीं है. I am speaking from one of the corners of my house जहाँ पे कि अच्छा नेटवर्क आता है, and half an hour पहले तक I wasn't sure if I would be able to be a part of this call or not. So my fingers were crossed totally. So in all this scenario, I just feel for all the children, you know, especially the girl children out there, जिनके कि ज़्यादातर parents first generation learners हैं, and those girls जब normally school में भी आते हैं तो parents they find some excuses to take them out of the school. आज मत जाओ, घर पे काम है, खेती बाड़ी है, या अपने छोटे भाई को देखना है, he is not well, you know. तो अब तो वो I just feel very bad for them, and you know, it's I can't imagine कि वो कैसे पढ़ रहे होंगे. I know most of them वो पढ़ नहीं रहे होंगे, क्योंकि ऑनलाइन क्लासेस भी कुछ प्राइवेट स्कूल्स कर रहे हैं, वो भी प्राइवेट स्कूल्स कर रहे हैं, एंड वो भी उतने इफेक्टिवली ज्यादातर नहीं कर पा रहे हैं. It's a completely new thing, I think, for everyone.
तो आप जो बोल रहे हो गैप बहुत ज्यादा हो गया है,
बहुत ज्यादा.
Last time the children, तो we are really talking about dangerous levels of gap that have come between learning. जो दूसरी बात मुझे आपसे सुनने को मिल रही है वो ये है कि इसका बच्चों के मेंटल स्ट्रेस के ऊपर भी बहुत असर पड़ता है. अपार्ट फ्रॉम द वायलेंस दे आर आल्सो अनसर्टेन अबाउट द फ्यूचर. छोटी बात जैसे कि एग्जाम की डेट क्या है, वहां से लेके क्या मैं स्कूल जा पाऊंगी, इतने रेंज का वेगनेस है which affects the best of us. तो बच्चों के लिए उस environment में ये बहुत grievous है. This and on और healthcare का भी कुछ ऐसे ही हाल है सैलम?
Yeah, because यहाँ पे हमारा healthcare system उतना अच्छा नहीं है. तो most of the patients जो बहुत severely मतलब बीमार होते हैं, तो they opt to go outside. दिल्ली, चंडीगढ़, कश्मीर, you know. So अभी जब lockdown impose हो गया, तो जैसे अभी migrants के वापस आने का वो प्रॉब्लम चल रहा था, तो here in Ladakh there was an issue of stranded students, stranded patients who had gone out to, you know, get their treatments done from hospitals elsewhere. So अब वो सब वापस आ गए हैं, you know. Most of them have come back because it's impossible to stay there in these conditions. But I don't know what will happen to them now, because अगर इनको यहाँ पे कुछ हो जाता है तो I don't
तो आगे क्या होगा?
आगे क्या होगा? And apart from that, and there were many people who were not even getting proper medication. I personally have a friend who who suffers from diabetes, and she didn't get her medicines for 3 months, you know. And we were like, please अपने health का ध्यान रखना, खाना ठीक से खाना, you will not get medicines, then it will be very difficult for you to handle all that. So it's a very difficult situation out here, Nagma.
Yeah. आपने ये भी बताया कि एक सिंपल 2-3 चीजें जो कल भी मुझे सुनाई पड़ी कि बिकॉज ग्रेजिंग कम है, दूध भी आपको कम मिलता है, बिकॉज यू नो, एंड 10 दिन तक 12 दिन तक दूध का एक्सेस भी नहीं होता है. तो छोटे बच्चों के लिए या पेशेंट्स के लिए ये बहुत बड़ा मसला है.
Yeah, exactly. क्योंकि रोड्स बंद थे, तो जो शॉप्स हैं जनरली जो वो इसेंशियल मटेरियल का मोस्टली 6 महीने तक का वो विंटर्स का स्टॉक रखते हैं. बट इस बार लॉकडाउन एक्सटेंड हो गया एंड इट वाज मतलब दुकानों में दूध मिलना बंद हो गया, यू नो. एंड गवर्नमेंट ने कहा कि हम आपको सब्जी ला के देंगे. आई रिमेम्बर हमें 2 प्याज, आधा गोभी और आधा बंद गोभी, आधा फूल गोभी काट के मिला था फ्रॉम आवर सरपंच की डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करना है सब में बराबर. So, and that was the town area, but who will send it to the rest of the people, you know?
And that is what I wanted people on this call, you know, everyone who's joined us to also hear that our understanding of rationing and what happens in a lot of places across the country, rationing there is a very different concept, and essential services also are very differently defined in our minds and a lot of places which we're hearing from today. So thank you so much, Salna. And Tabish, with the similar context, but you're working with startups, providing platforms to photographers in Kashmir. The platforms are for young talent who's got many dreams and aspiring to do things, and your platform gives it. Ye current environment may talk us through some of the things that have just fallen apart, and some, if there are any rays of hope.
Nagma, I would like to mention something here that apart from everyone who's on the panel today, I think I'm the only one who works in the for-profit sector as of now.
Yeah.
And what I can share right now is that everyone around is, I think everyone in every part of the country right now is dealing with a certain amount of uncertainty, and there is no, certain roadmap which is laid in front of them. As of now. Most of the people who have been speaking to, and for that matter, myself also, whosoever I'm speaking to, there is this, fear. There is a sense of, there's a lack of confidence which has, swept into the minds of people because of, So if, like Saldan said, if you take past few months into consideration, right from August. After the revocation of Article 370, there was a series of lockdown which was, in place in Kashmir. And before that, we have had government-imposed curfews. We have had separatist calls for hartals. We have had shutdown calls by trade federations and all sorts of lockdowns in place. But since this revocation of Article 370, there has been a certain hostility amongst people because, there was a certainty that they had towards that how and what is in store for them in Kashmir. But now with with the revocation, there is a lot of from what I understand, there are a lot of people who actually want to move out from this geography because the past years have developed certain issues which never used to be there before. There is every alternate year, or for that matter every year, there is a lockdown. Now after the 370, there is people actually want to move out of the geography, particularly because there was this one thing they were holding on to from past few years, that they had assurance of jobs, they had assurance of land, they had assurance and access to certain things. That particularly is not there right now. Actually, it's not written somewhere that they'll have access to it. Second thing is that with regard to startups and with regard to people who are young in Kashmir, there is something that we don't factor in with regard to Kashmir, is that if you see the young generation right now, I would consider it from 20 to 30 years old of age. They have seen most of their lives growing up. They have seen a lot of hostility around them from every end. So at this point of time, I think the most of the conversations that revolve around, like Saldan said, that there yahan ration milne ki problem hai. So so much so that the basic necessities have been been restricted to a certain area, a certain geography, a certain area, certain people. I don't know about the future. The startup scenario in Kashmir now feels very difficult. The businesses who had just started 1 or 2 years back, who we consulted with, who we sat with, who we discussed ideas about their expansion, their growth, they don't know the scenario right now. They don't know what is going to happen in future, because there are 2-3 things which have elevated with this lockdown. The restriction on the national highway, the debt coverage by the banks, the employment schemes, the subsidies and everything which we used to come in by the government before. There is no certainty, there is no roadmap for the future right now. So at this point of time, to be very honest, I have been established in business from past 5 or 6 years. At this point of time, if you ask me, any sane person would say that it's time to shut shop. But there are certain people who are very resilient and they want to stay back and do something for the community. There are certain people who still want to give back a little bit of what they've taken from. So
yeah.
So how does one keep going at it, Tavish? And I suspect, I'm sure you're one of them who's still hanging on and working for a future that is currently not giving many signs of hope. But so at this time, how do you draw your energy, and how do people like you really survive this short-term confusion and chaos?
I think it's more to do with the fact that you are so rooted with the place you belong to, and you want to give back a certain part of that to your community. I mean, anytime that we hire somebody to work with us, there is always this thing that, okay, we are at least giving employment to one or two or three people who, you know, are going to work with us, or they actually have means to livelihood because of us. If you see the employment scenario in Jammu and Kashmir, 25 uh, percent of the population in J&K is basically supported by government employees, and the rest 75 depends on this sector of small businesses.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you see that, it's a huge sector. There are no private companies, there are no corporates, there's nothing, there's no job opportunities for the youth, basically. There are a lot of people who go out to study, they'll come back, but they'll actually opt for jobs outside India or in other parts of the country. So all that you have to do in a state like Jammu and Kashmir, and I think it's small businesses, it's businesses who have been there from past so many years, who have actually provided this platform to people around them to work. So
Yeah.
I think it's that spirit that you should give back a little back to the community rather than actually turning your back against it. Otherwise, if you I mean, take me as an example. The year I started ThinkPod, I was supposed to inaugurate it in May, and Burhan Wani was killed a few days after that. I was shut straight 8 months down, and I was paying rent from my pocket for about, I think, a year or so. And the place was completely shut down. And I had similar businesses running all across the state. So, I mean, if you go by that, then, you know, you'll give up any day in a place like Kashmir, Ladakh, with difficult geographies, or any of these places for that matter. But I think it's the spirit that you want to give back a little to the community, which makes you stay there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And my God, that's a lot. Just with Saldon and Tabish, thank you very much for everything that you're doing. It's outstanding to hear what you're doing and what you're going through. Emerine, I come to you, and with the complexity of your geography, which I seem to be repeating a lot, but I'm sure you're there. But what is the core that you're working on, which is trafficking? We are talking about a completely locked down environment, and we have been hearing that globally itself violence has skyrocketed, violence against women, and we suspect trafficking to have taken a very eerie different shape in all this silence. So a context from you will be incredibly helpful to people who are hearing it right now. So over to you.
Yeah, so like what Saldon and Tabish mentioned, lockdown is not something new for us. It's our normal life. We've seen lockdown all our lives, curfews, internet shutdowns, insurgency. It's been a normal thing. And despite all of that, because of all of that, actually, human trafficking is even more massive. Like I mentioned earlier, because of the open borders we have with Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and then we have bigger cities like Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore. So pre-COVID, if I mention a bit, human trafficking it's a very big situation. It's a big situation here. There are a lot of people from the Northeast being trafficked to bigger cities for better employment opportunities, even to, you know, through open borders of Myanmar, and they go on to Singapore, Malaysia, and all of that stuff. And now if we look at it, more than half of the workforce in India who are working in retail chain companies like Zara or wherever, you will find people coming from the Northeast working in these companies. And now most of them, they have to come back to their own state because they have no more jobs left. These companies could have at least helped during these times, could have at least helped, supported them with at least their rent, or a ration, for them to actually survive in these cities rather than for them coming back to the region. So now there is an inbound migration of people coming back. For example, there are around 74,000 of people coming back from different cities to Assam, and they all depend. They all don't come from well-to-do family. They have to find ways to survive. There's another situation of tea workers in Assam. Even though the production is at low right now of tea in Assam, but the tea workers are the most vulnerable community in the region, and they are actually kind of selling their children into bonded labor for domestic help for low amount of money so that they could survive every day. So this is the kind of scenario of human trafficking that we have right now during COVID times. And there are a lot of northeastern people living in so many cities in India right now who don't have money to pay for their rent, so the landlords would actually exploit them, asking for in favor of the rent they would ask for sexual favors from these girls. So this is another kind of human trafficking, that's sexual exploitation that's happening. Then we have a lot of porn users, since there has been a relaxation of porn watching in the country. So there are a lot of porn users, watchers, and they prefer child pornography more than anything else. So that's also another crazy hodgepodge that's happening in the scenario of human trafficking from the region.
I'm just going to quickly insert one question which is very relevant to what you're saying. We have a question from Sauramandala Foundation, and they're asking whether with the coal mining also set to start, are we looking at a very scary proposition for trafficking again?
Definitely.
Something that you're envisaging as well?
Yes. So Impulse NGO Network filed a public interest litigation on banning coal mining in Meghalaya in 2013-14 in the National Green Tribunal. The National Green Tribunal gave an order to ban these coal mines because they were actually exploiting children to do rat hole mining. This is not a normal coal mining that happens in anywhere in the world, and there were a lot of children who were being exploited as bonded labor in Meghalaya for coal mining. Now, because of the entire COVID scenario, definitely the state would look at trying to revive their economy at any means, and they are actually going forward to the Supreme Court to file an appeal to open the coal mines back. So the fear now is that definitely there will be exploitation of children again, because nobody looks at safety measures for labor or migrant workers in these coal mines. So yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this, and we will move to Paul. And while Paul is also going to enlighten us about a lot of things that we don't understand on Arunachal Pradesh, I would also like to invite everyone to please start populating your questions. We would love to address them to these four brilliant people. Paul, I come to you now. We already briefly spoke of the range of issues that you're dealing with, the lack of support for those issues, and the context of Arunachal Pradesh. But if getting into a little more specifics, what are some of the more grievant, more difficult challenges that you face? How do you deal with it? How does your organization deal with it? So a little more understanding of your perspective would be very helpful. So over to you. I think, Paul, you are on mute maybe because we can't hear you.
Yeah, my network. Yeah.
Hello? Yeah, your network is slightly weak, Paul, because we're not able to hear you very, very, very clearly. Okay, so what we're going to do is, as Paul navigates, Paul, are you able to hear us clearly now?
Yeah, I'm able to,
Yeah. So would be great to hear from you, Paul, of your context and a little more of what really is are your top issues that you deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. So as in the beginning I mentioned, we are basically into the section which is not very much covered by the state government, which are being deprived by the mainstream society, especially the policymakers in the state government in the state. So we are dealing with school dropouts. We're dealing with the farmers, especially, who are in the field, who are not able to market their products. And this COVID-19 has very much affected these vulnerable communities and the people in the area. And, I just want to emphasize on this. In the beginning of this COVID-19 venture, we tried to support mainly the three stakeholders, the medical.
Okay, I think we're losing Paul. Hello, Paul?
Network support.
Your network seems
Hello?
to be weak. Yes, Paul. Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, my network support, no? So
Yeah.
as I was saying, in the beginning of the COVID-19, we tried supporting the district police and the medical team, but my team realized that a good portion of the vulnerables are being neglected from the main relief operation. So that's how we started doing the baseline survey and then start reaching out. And once we thought of starting our relief operation during this COVID-19 lockdown, fund and sponsorship was another issue. In Northeast, it's very difficult to raise any fund, any sort of fund. People are well-to-do, they have fun, but then giving away back to organization is a very tough thing. So my good friend, Abbas from Mumbai tagged me in the Facebook saying that Give India is another platform where you can raise online. That's how the initiation began. And thank God, the generous people from across the country contributed more than 2 lakh of amount. And that's how till date we are on the relief operation. We are on the 4th stage of relief operation, reaching these migrant minors, the women, the sick, and the differently able people. And out of the many works we have done during this COVID-19, I want to just bring to picture 1 or 2 cases. We had a 9-year boy. His name is Lavo Lingi. He's not very far away from our growing town. He was undergoing a very skin disease problem. He lost his mom 1 year back, and he had a dad who is not an income earner. So this boy went to the Northeast, and our childline team went to visit him, and it could have been a very, very serious life. We managed to take him through this lockdown and then give a treatment. Today he's a very happy boy. There was another case. There's another case of minor 14-year-old girl. She was working as a helper in one of the corner. The good neighbor having to cut the story short, she was sexually abused. And during this lockdown, the news came to our notice, our 1098. So immediately, our team sprang on foot walking to the area, because once the local owner came to know that she was pregnant, they keep sent. We went to the house, we met the parents. Parents happened to be Oriya, and happened to be a Nepali. So we had a very close chatting, and my team counseled the girl, and all facts were being narrated to us, and we sprang up, and we also we met the man who ended into this activity with the minor, and of course the team from the various team requesting us to solve a traditional and customary way of solving issues. So these are the cases which are coming to us during this lockdown period.
Yeah.
To mention more of domestic violence cases. Yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you to all of you. And we've been receiving some very interesting questions from people who are viewing. So I'd like to actually bring them along this journey of our discussion also, because these questions are relevant to how we would like to proceed as well. So Saldon, मुझे आपसे पूछना था, and आपका mic mute पे है. तो what is coming is कि ये जो लॉकडाउन में जो आपने सिनारियो सुनाया है, जिसमें हेल्थ केयर और एजुकेशन पे बहुत मसला आया हुआ है, बट इसमें दो चीज़ों का ऑडियंस को क्लैरिटी चाहिए. एक तो इसमें डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस इंक्रीज होने का बहुत चांस है, तो क्या ये वहाँ ऑलरेडी हो रहा है? दूसरा, सेक्सुअल एंड हेल्थ रिप्रोडक्टिव सिस्टम चल भी रहा है या नहीं? तो आप थोड़ा उसके बारे में हमें बताएंगे.
See, domestic violence तो होता है, मतलब it happens. We hear about it every next day कि यहाँ इसका husband ऐसा है या ये बंदा domestic violence करता है and all. But during this lockdown, और सारे components of life, उसको secondary कर दिया गया है. So there is not much to hear about all these things. और ऐसे कुछ चीजों पे कुछ यहाँ पे काम नहीं हो रहा है. अगर ऐसा कोई डेटा भी यहाँ नहीं आ रहा है कि someone is suffering from domestic violence or not. But I'm sure हो रहा होगा, because अब घर पे हैं तो बहुत सारे लोग they are alcoholic as well, and there's a lot of mental issues going on around. So those issues are still there in our society, and I think अभी उसका degree बहुत अलग होगा पहले normal life से. जैसे अभी मैंने कहा कि जैसे girl students जो घर पे रहते हैं या पहले ही वो काम ज्यादा करते हैं, उनको पढ़ाई पे उतना encouragement नहीं मिलता है, but अभी जो घर पे वो हैं, वो उनकी पढ़ाई नहीं हो रही है, और उस सब के डेटा का क्या, so everything that is in the background,
so everything becomes secondary is what you're saying.
Everything has become secondary and no one is talking about it, और उस पे कोई ज्यादा वो भी ध्यान भी नहीं दे रहे हैं. But I'm very much sure even reproductive health पे भी, if someone wants to terminate her pregnancy, say for example, it's not possible.
It's not possible.
Yeah, it's not possible right now, because इस सिचुएशन में मेडिकल इवन डॉक्टर्स को भी बहुत सारे वो मिले हुए हैं कि कोई सीरियस ग्रीवियस मतलब कोई दूसरा पेशेंट आ जाता है, ये चीजें आप नहीं कर सकते हैं, हॉस्पिटल में नहीं हो सकता है, बिकॉज बेड्स शुड बी रिजर्व्ड फॉर कोविड-19 सिचुएशन एंड ऑल. बट दैट्स द सैड थिंग कि एवरीथिंग इज सेकेंडरी राइट नाउ. Everywhere is COVID. And just like Tabish and all the other panelists have spoken about our geographies, that we have been locked down since I don't know how many years, for how many months, and the other issues are also important for us. So for example in Ladakh I'm saying, because हम बहुत political turmoil है, geographically हम बहुत difficult terrain में हैं, and उसके ऊपर एक तरफ पाकिस्तान है, दूसरी तरफ चाइना है, and China is so
right now you must be under a lot of stress. मतलब उधर वहाँ की community में बहुत stress होगा because of the recent ongoings.
Yeah, especially the people living on the borders, on the Changtang region, because they are nomads and they have to graze their cattle. And most of them are Pashmina rearing people, and these grazing lands have been shut due to the intrusions or the army movements happening over there. So it's difficult for them, if they don't graze their cattle, will they earn their livelihood? That's their life. So COVID is there, but there are also other things जिसकी वजह से लोग वो बहुत ज्यादा सफर कर रहे हैं, और बहुत ज्यादा लोग मर भी रहे हैं all over the country, and everyone is aware of that.
Yeah. So with that, Tabish, there is a question that has come from the audience, and I'm actually going to club it with another interesting question from Mubin. One is we're saying कि इतना लंबा समय, there's been such a long period of poverty and poor social living conditions. How are the local how is the young population dealing with it? And here it also clubs in with another question that is coming, which is, are there any good practices that are even possible to hedge losses that comes with such disruptions in these geographies? Matlab monetary ho ya non-monetary ho, is there any coping mechanism plus hedging mechanism to be coping with this time?
I'll actually start with, I think, Mubin's question. I think what I've learned over the past few years about hedging losses or hedging such, things is that one thing that in any business that we don't realize, and specifically in Kashmir, is that the real estate cost is something which in every business is something that, kills you. In a place like Kashmir, if you own a place, if you rent a place rather, you're paying easily for 1,000 square feet of area, you're paying around 1 lakh rupees. So if you shut down for another 8 months, you're paying 8 lakh rupees out of your pocket, because there'll definitely be no profits if you're in a shutdown. So one is that you should definitely work on reducing the real estate costs. Second is that, which I have learned from my personal experience, is that you should restrict fixed assets and rather invest in people rather than investing in assets, building up a huge office, a huge interesting thing that Mubin himself has done, which I would like to mention here, is that because there was no 4G network and there was this huge hue and cry about that the students are not able to access classes online, and there's a lot of, so they came up with something which is very innovative and which always works in a situation, is he came up with a platform which actually works on 2G network. So such things always give you an edge over every other business, and it definitely helps in coping up.
Yeah.
Moving on to how are the youth, how are the young people coping up with this mechanism? Like I said, this lockdown is nothing which is not normal for people in Kashmir. I mean, if you see a laborer who was walking down miles with their babies on their backs or on their suitcases in terrible conditions, for them, the COVID disease is something that will kill them later. It's their livelihood which kills them. So for youth in Kashmir, for people who are young in Kashmir, there's a lot of frustration because of a lot of things which are going around in Kashmir. There is a lot of coping up that needs to be done with a lot of uncertainties that go around them on a daily basis. In a daily life in Kashmir is that you move out in the morning, you don't know what happens till the evening. There can be suddenly a blast somewhere, there can be a curfew imposed somewhere, there can be anything that can happen. So with things like that, it's pretty much normal for them to actually experience this on a daily basis. But yes, what I've lately noticed is that there has been a shift in the new generation in Kashmir. If you would have gone 10 to 15 years back when I was comparatively younger, I would see that a lot of people would say that the only future for you is to have a government job, because that's the only stable thing that you would have. And because of which, even people would not marry off their daughters to people who would not have a government job, even if he was, even if he was like a very, even if it was a very menial job in any manner, even if it was a restricted amount of salary and he would be paid about 50 times more in a corporate, people would prefer to marry them because there was that stability that came up with the government job. But now there is a certain shift from that mentality, and people are moving towards the reality that, there are a lot of sectors which are still unexplored apart from tourism. There's horticulture. People are moving to agriculture. They're actually innovating, bringing in innovations in sectors like horticulture and agriculture, setting up online marketplaces, exporting to different countries, branding and personalizing products, and selling them on larger platforms. So that is something that that innovation has come up because of people getting educated outside the country and then bringing back that to the society. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And to add to that, Dabesh, what's the migrant situation in Kashmir? I mean, are people coming back or are people leaving? What is happening there?
So as far as my data, I think I can safely say that there have been, so Kashmir constitutes a large amount of people from UP who actually are involved in a lot of work, which is right from saffron and apple farming to construction to painting to everything. Because what has happened is that there has been a shift from, these used to be family-run enterprises and businesses. But what has happened lately is that people tend to hire people because their own children are out to either study or have opted for alternative careers. So there was a lot of migrant force which was actually present in J&K. And apart from people who were actually stranded outside, these people who were from West Bengal and Bihar, they have been slowly and steadily moving out. And I think the number was already reduced in Kashmir because after the August, 370 revocation, a lot of laborers actually started moving out because of what the future holds for them. There was a lot of hostility around because there was shutdown and communication was snapped. So they preferred to actually move out at that point of time. So relatively, the numbers were reduced by the time this COVID pandemic hit. But again, like I'd like to emphasize is that March to September is the work period in Kashmir. It's the time when construction, it's an idle time for construction. It's an idle time for everything that happens, farming, everything. So, I mean,
it's
to be honest.
painful to see this go by.
Yes, exactly. It's really painful.
It's terribly painful because the next season is coming after almost 8 months again.
8 months, exactly.
Oh, that's horrible. It's horrible.
Yes.
Marine, over to you with two very interesting questions that we've gotten. One is that misinformation or rumor mongering, what is, are you having to deal with it on a large level there? Or is it something that is not really a bigger problem in your environment? But I also have a follow-up question that is misinformation or artificial panic also created to have more and more young girls or boys trapped in trafficking? Is that something that is happening, or is that not happening, or how much is it happening?
So yeah, I mean, misinformation is like a common thing. It's a trend nowadays. You have a lot of WhatsApp messages, Facebook stories on different things. People don't really, check the what do I say, the how true these data or these facts are, and the spread, it spreads like wildfire. So yeah, definitely there's a lot of misinformation, especially about the COVID situation, which really adds on to stigmatization of people in the community who are actually affected with the virus. Firstly, yes, there's a lot of exploitation happening on women and children, despite of COVID or no COVID. Now it's just even more crazier because women and children are now stuck at home. Most of them, they have to come out of their shelter homes or rehabilitation centers and go back to their family, and these are the most vulnerable people. So yes, definitely exploitation happens to them a lot, and there's a lot of misinformation about how they were trafficked. And a lot of people in the community, once they know that they are trafficked, then it's very difficult for them to get back or have a normal life in the society. So yes, there is a lot. And so and there's a lot of information going through Facebook, which we have seen, and hence we are in great contact with deep contact with Facebook to actually help them out in navigating which are false information coming out from the region on human trafficking, or be it about the COVID situation, which really helps at relaxing the false things that's happening around, which can really at least somehow prevent some sort of sexual exploitation or human trafficking on the ground.
Yeah. So that's a lot of diverse, very critical information that we need to know. I want to take the next about 6 to 7 minutes to just, for each one of you to just give us maybe one case, if possible, which has given you so much immense joy, which makes you do what you really want to do. Something that worked out, some ray of hope, something that made your, warmed your heart and keeps you going. Can we spend the next 5-6 minutes just hearing from each one of you very, very, in a crisp manner, if we can, on what are the beautiful aspects of doing what you do. And I'll give the mic to the lone man of the house first. Paul, are you able to respond right now? Is your network clear?
I think now it's slightly better. I put up the video.
Okay. No, I think it's okay to not have your camera on, Paul, because maybe that way you'll have better, your voice will carry better. So if you get to just tell us about something that really made you feel like, yes, you have to keep going on.
Okay. So just want to share on it. Now in tribal belt, respecting the elderly people has been in the custom, but slowly now with this sort of modernization, education, separate family, nuclear family, I have seen especially that in the tribal belt, the elderly parents are being neglected and they're on street, at home, they're not very much taken care. Both the wife and husband work in different offices, either in school or government jobs. So the thing that I have seen through my organization that we have been going back to this elderly, and during these past 2 3 months, we have been visiting the 70 to 100 years old men and women who are aged. So immense amount of joy when we sit with them and then listen to them, their old stories. Immense amount of joy. We go with some small package to give them as a gift, and then ask for their blessings. They keep on narrating, which they are normally their children are fed up of maybe hearing the old stories.
Great, great. Saldon, would you like to take it up for here? कोई ऐसी बात जो जिससे आपको बस लगा कि काम करते ही रहना है?
Yeah, so there are many instances. So उनमें से कुछ ऐसे instances है जो that have hit me hard, and there are none which are still with me, So एक instance था जब मैंने यहाँ पे द्रास में स्कूल में health and sanitation initiative पे काम करना शुरू किया था. तो because I could not hire a contractor because of the पैसे कम थे हमारे पास, so I used to deal with the contractors and get the raw materials and all those stuff. So I was staying with one of my friends those days. So she introduced me to her grandmom and she asked कि तुम्हारी दोस्त करती क्या है? तो उसने मजाक में बोला, but उसने बोला कि दादी माँ ये ठेकेदार है. So and her grandma was like, हमारा टाइम था कि जब हम बाजार में भी खुले नहीं घूम सकते थे, and now लड़कियों के लिए ऐसा टाइम आ गया कि ठेकेदारी कर रहे. So that was one of the moments. And another moment is when starting last year when I started to work with one of those schools, and school बंद था, सब कुछ मतलब syllabus complete नहीं था, बच्चों का English level वहाँ पे बहुत poor है, and वो ठीक से खुद को, क्योंकि सारे subjects English में है, वो खुद से express नहीं कर पाते हैं papers में. They know that they might fail, and they might not do good in their exams. But जैसे exams आने वाले थे और school खुल गया, and all of them were preparing so, with all their heart, going to teachers, asking questions, and जो teachers बोल रहे हैं वो करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. So that, कि जब वो, when they are not giving up on their future, how can we, right? Yeah, so this place, Kargil, has given me a lot. I just love the resilience of people because Kargil has gone through 3 wars, Indo-Pak wars. But you should see the people, the resilience and the hope for the future, their smiles and their love. And this place has given me my husband. And now I have a 2-year-old son. So yeah, I'm just grateful for being among these people. I just love them. So I think I am where I am, and I just want to keep working for this place. Yeah.
Oh, outstanding. Thank you. Thank you so much. Emerine, would you like to go next?
So when COVID happened, I was like, oh, now I need to just give up, either stay home and do nothing. But then, so Impulse NGO Network has a sister organization as well called Impulse Social Enterprises, where we give livelihood to women entrepreneurs and artisans so that to eliminate human trafficking. There are around 7,000 women entrepreneurs working under Impulse Social Enterprises. And with that, we have different state partners working with us to actually accelerate the whole operation. So it was just like 3-4 days ago, I was talking to my boss and she told me that, now we are stopping all the production that's happening, and we're going to only concentrate on making masks because we need to keep giving livelihood to these women artisans and entrepreneurs working under us. So I said, that's a great idea. And, the other way of, we can give livelihood to these women as well as, provide these masks to the people who are living in the vulnerable communities for free. So this was like a two-way thing that Impulse Social Enterprise is doing right now. But then the problem was there was no finance. But then these state partners, they were like, it's okay, we will, pitch in our own personal finance and try and make masks as much as we can so that we can give to the vulnerable community, and we'll see later on if we can scale this and help them more. So this was, this is a story that gave me hope. I was like, if they can, do it, so can I should not just give up, and I should also be on board and continue doing what we are doing, and not just give up just because there's no money. So yeah, secondly is the grit coming from a region like the Northeast. I think it's just in your DNA to have grit and resilience. You have to improvise, you have to find a way out, you have to be positive always and hopeful that there will be sunshine at the end of the day. Yeah.
Outstanding. Thank you, Emily. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you. Tavish, you're going last in this question.
Actually, I think every day there's something that inspires you to keep going. There have been a lot of people who sometimes tell me that, it's time you should actually move out. Just few days back, there was a friend, he said that you've been fighting this war since past 6 years now. I think it's time to relocate to a better place like Bangalore, which has this environment and ecosystem, and you can actually grow. But then there is this, like I said, there's a pull that is, about that is brought about from the people who are around you, from your own community. When they work with you, there is an understanding, and there is a wavelength that you cannot get outside your own community. When you actually provide them any opportunity or access to any information, I would just restrict it to information rather than resources. It is something which is overwhelming for me, and it is something which is very inspiring for me, because from the community that I come from, I have seen a hierarchical system, whether in politics, whether in business, there are very restricted, limited opportunities for people who are young, and there is a very limited amount of people who actually share these resources with them. So, like when I started off and continuously throughout the period, ThinkPod has been a space where people have been able to access information, and also have access to other people to join in networks, and have access to programs and information. So I think for me, that is something that keeps me going. Another thing is that, Emrin said, that for me, I think it's embedded in my nature that every obstacle now seems like an opportunity. COVID happened, and everyone was like, we should shut down. I said, no, I think it's time to do something new. So like she said that we need to provide masks and everything. We're in the process of finalizing something on the similar lines, where we can actually involve local women and men as well. Unlike them, we like to give them equal opportunity. We want to involve a few people from the community who actually bring in we can actually develop certain products which will be helpful in this pandemic, with be it sanitizers or masks, and we provide them at subsidized prices to people who actually don't have access to it in rural areas, rather than urban has a lot of. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. So we are quickly going to take 1 minute each to just say, see, we are closing in, and we have many well-meaning, many influential people who are listening in right now. And if there is a message that you would want to broadcast right now, which is around, what is it? How would you like people to view, support, enable your work? Each one of you, I'm going to come to each one of you on this. So Tabish, because we're still with you, why don't you begin this? What would you like people to remember, take back, and support you with?
I think there is something which is an unexplored arena in Kashmir, which is the healthcare system is something which we realize right now is the need of the hour. And it is a very understated, underdeveloped sector in Kashmir. And apart from tourism, horticulture, and other things, healthcare is something that can be really invested into. People from Kashmir go out in other parts of the state, in the country, to actually get these facilities. Anybody who has access to these, now that accessibility to Kashmir has been increased, so you can actually invest into these sectors, and anybody who wants to get in touch to help them, I would be happy to help.
Fantastic. So you're saying look at Kashmir also from, if I may say so, a business opportunity for healthcare, because healthcare is extremely critical, and we can see at least in the short and medium term, it'll be good
Yes.
to set infrastructure up. That's
Yes,
what you're.
exactly. Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. Emerine, you would like people to remember, take back. What would you like?
So like I mentioned earlier, right now we're like tackling a dual challenge where we're trying to sustain livelihood of women artisans and entrepreneurs on ground by helping them make masks and giving them giving them that money, the income that they should be getting every month. And at the same time, we want to distribute these masks to vulnerable communities and people living in shelter homes and rehabilitation centers. So my ask would be if there could be some sort of a support to help in production of masks and distribution of masks. People can support us with just 150 rupees for a mask. This can help sustain in the income of an artisan for a day. It can be 750 rupees for 9 months, which can sustain the income of an artisan for a week, and 15,000 rupees for 180 masks, which will sustain the income of women for a month and their family as well. And these masks will then be distributed to these other vulnerable communities and shelter homes and rehabilitation centers. So this is my ask, and I hope someone would just reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Paul, would you like to go next if your network is still helping you?
Yeah, so the good lesson that I've learned from this COVID-19 is that Arunachal state has immense natural resources, but till late we never thought of tapping it or working on the sustainable model. We have been depending too much on outside for everything and anything. When we go to the market, when we ask vegetable, they said it came from Shillong, Emerine, and it came from outside. I would encourage the state government and the local farmers and youth to focus on tapping the resources which is available within the state. And my ask is, support the post-COVID mental stress of these our people, especially the adolescents and the youth. The high rate of suicide is another big issue. Being quarantined and not able to have, get support, mental support is another issue. I request all the panelists as well as the viewers to support through means of counseling, all that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Saldon, you go next.
Yeah. So as
yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
We can hear you. Your
Hello.
frame has frozen, but हम आपको सुन सकते हैं.
Okay, so whenever Ladakh is in discussions or whatever, so mostly people think about Leh Ladakh. And Kargil has always been like in a shadow, It was only the Kargil war, and अभी भी जब भी लोग आते हैं तो सिर्फ यहाँ पे war memorial देखते हैं, and that's the relevance that people relevant लगता है. But Kargil is the place, and I think both this is the place which needs the सबसे काम की ज़रूरत, especially in the field of education and health. की ज़रूरत करगिल में बहुत ज़्यादा है, especially in the COVID lockdown. We are trying to to all those students who are not able to get access to their learning materials or to their schools, and also to adolescent girl children who are facing issues in adolescent health issues in their management. So we just want to continue whatever we thought of doing जब कोविड अगर कोविड नहीं होता तो in a way that is possible in this geography. And as usually होता है कि because of our fee, because it's like a budding organization, so many of the people they hesitate to invest. They will say कि हाँ आप papers कितने होंगे, या फिर इसका result कैसे impact कितने दिन में, numbers and all. So I would be it will be really, I will be really grateful if someone believes in our work and, try to help us, because I really need to increase my team size and get on volunteers on board to make things happen which we want it to happen. हम चाहते हैं कि वो जो हम चाहते हैं कि बच्चों तक पहुंचे, स्पेशली गर्ल चिल्ड्रन जो गाँव में हैं, दूर दराज के गाँव में हैं, उन तक पहुंचे. So if there is anyone out there who would be, lend a little helping hand, that really amazing for us and Zambati, particularly at this period of time when everything seems, shut down and सब कुछ बंद हो गया है. So yeah. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. I have the privilege of closing this session on 2 counts. One is summarizing some of the incredible things that I've heard, and let me stay with that for some time. I must confess to everyone who's listening as well, to the panelists, when the team approached me and asked me to do this session and said life in difficult geographies, the first thing I told them is, but I am embarrassed to say that I know very less about these geographies. So maybe someone who understands it more and will be able to ask the right questions should be there. But then they made me feel good about myself, and I accepted. But I've done some homework on the 4 organizations that are today on the panel, as well as these 4, I think, awesome, incredible individuals who are doing what they're doing. Anyways, ये sector में every day is a humbling to see people just do what they do, and when you ask them कि आप क्यों कर रहे हो, the simple thing is और क्या करते, because I just love this place, or I just feel this passion, and that is the common theme we all heard from all of them. And I mean, I honestly even today grapple with what keeps people and young wonderful people like you motivated. But I just hope to God that whatever that magic thing is present in all of you and also spreads, because God knows in the current environment and for a better world, we need more and more Emerines, Tabishes, Saldons and Pauls. And it's been an incredible research for me for the last 2 days, having read about all of you. And I'm not sure we've done justice to your work, but we've done the best to represent 4 diverse issues on this panel. To summarize quickly, what we heard is not only stories from Kargil, Ladakh, Arunachal, Kashmir, Meghalaya, but we also heard of issues ranging from trafficking, from broken education infrastructure, difficulties in health, access to health facilities, difficulties in setting up and running businesses, and simply difficulties of all kinds where people are putting up multiple solutions to deal with it. And that's an incredible learning. That resilience and grit is one more common thing that we heard from every one of them. I think as participants who may not be able to join on the field with them, we have an immense responsibility to take home and absorb what has been shared with us today, and also make some critical decisions in our own worlds, where we can make some positive impact for and accommodate for even this kind of work, because it is very important and it must be heard and it must be included. We're coming to this this end of the discussion for this gripping session of Life in Difficult Geographies. We are very proud and inspired by their work. And again, thank you very much. I seem to be going on thanking all of you, but really, thank you. Now for the next part. Over the last 8 days, most of you who have joined us in different panels, but also those who haven't, but who've clued on later. We've heard some incredible stories. We've learned on realities on ground. These stories, these narratives have opened our eyes and given us a glimpse of what the different people are facing, maybe common issues, but the nuances, what divides the experience between people is mind-boggling. The country has a diverse geography. People with different socio-economic, geographical backgrounds are facing different kinds of issues. These people, these warriors, these young and seasoned players in the social development world, they have been speaking to us over these 8 fabulous sessions, giving us that diversity. We are incredibly grateful to all of them for keeping the fight up, being the change makers on the field, making us realize that there is hope for a better future, because our youth is composed of people like these people. I thank the audience on behalf of the Reality Check team, not only for this session, but for all the 8. I also request all of us to introspect into how we make better decisions of funding, of accommodating for disruptions in work of all kinds. I also hope that in the COVID becomes that one disrupting, a painful episode, which will give us some recalibrations in how we make our decisions, where we include beyond our immediate problems, where we include for diversity and we include for grievous issues which may not fall in our strategy. So with this message for sensitivity, inclusion in our funding decisions, in our immediate environments, in our social behaviors, I would like to close the Reality Check webinar series. On your screen is a tribute to everyone who participated, who joined, who shared their stories. There were 27 of them. They came from 17 states, and it was an incredible 8 episodes where we only learned and learned more. And my hope is that as we go forward, we don't forget these learnings. And that is why my repeat request that let's register what was told to us, and let's make this a very, very strong anchor point in how we behave and make decisions going forward. With that, thank you everyone, all the panelists once again, everyone who's joined us, and the team of Reality Check. It's a brilliant idea. It was a brilliant series. It's ending in good time, but I hope you have better, and I'm sure you have better ideas, and you will come back with more. But with that, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nagma. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.